Alright, so if you've ever seen an aquarium video, you know I tend to lean towards the larger size of the aquariums, ecosystems that are big enough to actually support the fish in there. So bigger fish need really big tanks, and that's generally what I tend to do. I needed an aquarium, well, I wanted an aquarium on my desk next to my video editing computer, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out how to get a 500-gallon on here. So after a little bit of time, common sense kicked in, and I decided to go with a 5-gallon tank. And I wanted to try something very different for me, because I've never kept a betta fish before right now. So I've always, they're pretty popular in the hobby. It's never been my thing, but what I have been interested in is I've seen people, they always talk about keeping them in these tiny little tanks with no decor, changing out half the water every couple days. The fish are very not stimulated. They have to put things in the tank to give them some sort of stimulation. And I thought to myself, is there a better way? There's got to be a better way, right? So how about if I build a ecosystem, a natural ecosystem aquarium, just really small, and I put a betta in there, and will he act normal? Will the betta actually be stimulated by an actual environment? So behind me is my attempt at this, and in this video you'll see how I got from an empty 5-gallon from Petco to what you see behind me. Alright, so here's the equipment that went into our 5-gallon natural betta build. So we started with just a 5-gallon aquarium, and all I did was just paint the rims white. You can see here, still have the tape on from that. But and made a few notches in the plastic trim to allow these lights to fit on properly, little LED lights. I took some Metalamat and some egg crate and just cut it to the shape of the tank, and then cut some PVC pipes to make little risers for our pump vault for our downflow filter system, and simply cut little notches in the bottom so any water that runs through can leak out. 2 very small little water pumps to go down to the pump vault, a little flat ceramic heater to go down to the pump vault, some plastic tubing to bring water up from the pump vaults up into the aquascape, and then a series of aquascape materials I had laying around, rocks and gravel and sand, some wood, Malaysian root, and a little more rock, and then 2 types of rock aggregate. So we'll have medium rock, small rock, really small rock, and sand all mixed in there. And that's going to be part of our filtration system. Okay, so first steps to making the ecosystem betta tank was to make some modifications to the tank. Just painting the trim white to match the area that I have. Find a location just to the right of my video editing machine, because it's such a small tank, you need to have it close to you to really be able to appreciate it. And then another small modification just to the rim so that the light would fit on properly. And then now we can start with the real meat of the build, which is the pump vault that's going to power our downflow filtration system. So what we've done is we've cut a bunch of little PVC pipes and painted them black. We've cut little notches in the bottom so that the water, any water that goes inside, can easily drain out. And what we're going to do is we're just going to place these in the aquarium. They're just going to hold up the Metalamat, which forms the base of our downflow filtration system. And on top of the Metalamat, we're going to build up multiple layers of substrate, including gravel and then sand. And then, so once the risers are in place, we're just going to go ahead and stick in the heater. So this is a flat ceramic heater. And then we have 2 pumps. And these are obviously the pumps that go in the pump vault. And I'm going to have 2 of these, 1 on each side. And you notice we have tubes connected to them. So that's going to flow up through the Metalamat and then up into the aquascape. And it's going to be hidden behind rocks and wood and that sort of thing. So it's going to pull the water down through our substrate and our Metalamat into the pump vault and then back up. And then it comes up to the surface. It's going to oxygenate the water by rippling the top of the water. But we're going to hide it so that there's not a lot of, we want to have a little bit of rippling to, take advantage of the LED lights to get that shimmer and also to aerate the water in case we want to have something other than betta. Betta, of course, could breathe from the air or breathe from the surface, but we are going to have that oxygen in the water to create the dissolved oxygen so that we can have the aerobic bacteria, which is going to be, you know, one key part of our filtration system. So now that we have these in place, it's time to get the metalamat and go ahead and feed these through the holes in the metalamat and get that put down, since that's the base of our tank. Okay, so we fed the tubes through the metalamat on both sides, and we now have the base of our substrate layer, and we've created our pump vault down here. There's a little bit of a cutout here, so if we ever need to, we can put a tube down to suck out any debris, if there's any debris built up in the bottom of the pump vault. But we will cover that with a flat rock and aquascape right over it, and we can just remove it if and when needed. Another thing we're going to do is go ahead and do a little cable management and get all of these guys fed up through the corner, and then we'll hide them in the aquascape. So if when it's all said and done, if it's done right, you won't see any equipment at all. Of course, we will block off down here. Usually what I do is I just plastic dip with whatever color I want, because that, if I ever needed to, it scrapes off with a razor blade and I have a normal 5-gallon tank again and not a modified one. Okay, let me feed those cables and start with the aquascape. All right, there's our Basescape with the metalamat, the gravel substrate, the hardscape, the rocks, the dragonstone, and the Malaysian rootwood. As you can see, you don't see any equipment. Keep in mind, this will be blocked off. You won't see this. You won't see the pump vault. You don't see any equipment like heaters or the returns for the pumps or anything. And the water, if it's done right, it should dribble out of each side where it looks like it's just coming out from underneath that tree root. And then as this root sticks out of the aquarium, hopefully what I can do is in the future make an adjustment with the lighting where I can raise it up some so that I can actually grow terrestrial plants or immersed plants up here, as well as submersed plants within the aquarium. But now that we have the base layer of rock, keeping in mind that we don't want to put it too thick, because the pumps that we have running this tank, they're not super powerful. So if you do a real big deep sunbed, you're not going to be pulling that water through the downflow filter very efficiently at all. It'll just find some crack around the edge and it'll all go that way. So now we're going to go ahead and top this off with sand, and then that'll complete the hardscape. We'll fill it up, and then it'll be time for plants. Okay, so one of the first things I did was check out some videos on YouTube of the natural habitat of the betta. Now, I'm certainly aware of them. I haven't kept them, but I know quite a bit about them. I know they come from drainage ditches, and then they go out into flooded fields and rice paddies and that sort of thing from Thailand and some parts of Southeast Asia. But it's one thing to know about it. It's another thing to sort of see it. So I found some great videos of the fish in the wild and what the environment looked like. And so yes, it is very shallow drainage ditches, and there's no obvious, the water flow is very subtle. More so I saw water flow coming from the actual wind itself rippling the top of the water, and I saw that there was lots of nooks and crannies that the fish were literally not jumping but sort of slithering up and into little pockets of water throughout the clumps of grass. When I saw the video, the rice paddy was not flooded, but the grassy areas nearby the drainage ditches were. So they were in those pretty shallow areas. Not even in a drainage ditch was a foot deep. They were in an area that was, probably more like 6 inches deep. So that all went into the inspiration of the aquarium I built here, as well as a sustainable aquarium. So I wanted one where I wasn't changing out water. There was not a need to have to change out water every few days to maintain water quality. I wanted an actual ecosystem. And so, as you know, with this aquarium, we went with a downflow system where we have pumps that are in a vault underneath the substrate, underneath the metalamat, and we actually are bringing the water down to the pumps, and we're bringing it back up in the back corners, and we're just rippling it out. It's basically, the tube is just going into the wood, and it's just rippling the surface, similar to like how the wind might ripple the surface. Now for the betta fish, he seems very comfortable in this aquarium. This is 30 days in, and he's been doing great. And it also works really well for when you're feeding the betta, because the food doesn't, immediately get pushed around the aquarium or blown away from the fish. It kind of hangs out, near, so the fish can easily just take it off the top of the water. So let me demonstrate what I mean. We'll go with a little bit of bug bites and get them right there in the corner. And one thing that I have been pleasantly surprised with keeping a Betta is that they're very personable. Like from day one, this fish has not been afraid of me. It knows where I feed it. It's ready. It sees me. It's interactive. It's very cichlid-like in that nature. And it's just, you know, actually pretty active. I like to think that the design of the aquarium has stimulated the fish and made the fish want to swim around and check things out. I certainly can't compare it to previous experience with Betta since I don't have any. Maybe that's something people could fill me in on in the comments, is what their experience is. But I found that this Betta is always swimming around, very interactive. Will follow my finger around the glass, always comes up to eat, always seems like it's hungry. And when I'm either far away from the tank or, you know, when I've been here for a while, I just see the Betta constantly swimming in and about, you know, the rock and the plants, always very inquisitive. Really going on all stages of the aquarium. Just very cool. So 30 days in, I would call this a success at this point. Obviously the proof is in the pudding longer term, but one thing I do want to add to the aquarium is I do think it needs some sort of either some really, really small nano fish around the bottom, or possibly some shrimp or a very small crayfish, possibly one of the dwarf Mexican crayfish, something along those lines. Some of the food goes past the Betta, of course, and right now it's just sort of sitting down there. So I think it makes sense to get some sort of bottom dweller to do that cleanup, whether it be, like I said, the shrimp or the crab, or maybe a very small bottom dwelling fish. So that's sort of the path forward right now with the tank. I feel like it's broken in. I feel like it's past the proof of concept, and it's ready to expand the ecosystem with some tank makes for the Betta. All right, well, I've already got some future plans for this aquarium, so there'll definitely be another update, and we'll check in on how the Aquascape matures, how the Betta's doing, and you know, hopefully we'll get this guy some fishy and invert tank mates to really make this a proper ecosystem. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. See that big boy behind me? That's Predator Bay. Part 6, Predator Bay going live, is out next week. Stay tuned.